You guys, we got to speak to an actual bona fide astronaut, Garret Reisman, who is also the NASA tech advisor on the Apple TV Plus series For All Mankind. Check it out. I get to speak to an astronaut. This doesn't happen very often. I don't know where to begin.
Well,
But let's start with the show. So, with every season, as we progress through the decades and we trip more and more into the realm of science fiction, how much wishful thinking do you get to contribute to the whole process?
yeah, I think, that's one thing I think all of us working on the show have in common is kind of an optimistic view of the future. And yes, there is plenty of conflict and strife and bad things that happen. And you will see in season 4, it's not all roses and rainbows,
Yeah.
but at the same time, where we're headed as a species, which sometimes in this day and age, when you watch the news, gets harder and harder to have optimism and hope. But fundamentally, I think we all share this common belief that we are headed towards a better future, and I think that does come through. And so I think we all inject our own optimistic view of how things will go. So I've been guilty of that as well. It's like, oh man, it'd be great if we had fusion power so that we can have plasma
Right.
drives and we can get to Mars in a month rather than more than half a year. So I get to play with that and bend some of the rules and have fun doing that as well.
Tell me, well, I don't know if you're allowed to tell me this, but sitting in the writer's room, um, have there been moments where things have popped up that have been a little too close to something that maybe NASA hasn't announced it, and you're like, I'm just going to keep quiet now?
uh, no, I think everything. I shared lots of stories in that room and about things that happened at NASA, and the only things that the only thing that comes close to it's not about like secrets or new technologies that haven't been announced. It's not like that. But there have been stories I told where I had to change the names to protect the guilty parties.
Right,
So
right,
there are
of
certain
course.
like individual stories that NASA probably wouldn't be happy, but it's okay if it's done in a fictional way. So some of the things that you see, especially in season 1 and season 2, are things that really did happen, or versions or extrapolations from things that truly did happen. But we can show that with fictional characters, where if we said, "Hey, did you know that this guy did this?" It would be a little more difficult, and NASA would be a little less happy, probably. So.
Um, I'm assuming that as an astronaut, you operate from a place that shuns the kind of thinking that goes, that's not how things are done. I'm assuming that line just doesn't get said at NASA, right? Um, what does that kind of open mindedness bring to a series like this?
So what I always try to do is find a way to tweak it or maybe modify it slightly so that the story is completely intact, but the engineering is a little bit more realistic, right? So the example I'll give you is in season 2, the finale. If you remember the duct tape spacesuits. So originally the plan was just the original script just had Gordo and Tracy run outside wearing like t-shirts, and I said,
Right.
"Oh, that really is not going to be believable." But the story was so good, and it was so dramatic and so compelling. That's okay. Well, how can we do the same thing but make it something that maybe could work? Maybe. And then that the idea of using a mechanical counter pressure suit, which is a real thing, where it's a squeeze suit that provides mechanical pressure rather than putting you inside a balloon, essentially.
Right.
That's a real thing, and we've done that. And so I said, well, maybe we could fashion that a crude one using duct tape. If all you need to do is survive for 30 seconds or so, and so that's how that came about. So that's kind of a good microcosm or one episode that explains what I try to do, which is I try to add some realism that but without messing with the genius of the story writing.
And of course, I guess to the everyday Joe, to the common public, there is an immediate relation to what we saw in Apollo 13, for example, in the film, where
Right.
they had to construct this stuff using boxes and duct tape and all of that stuff. So it's immediately relatable, right? And that
Yeah.
we think that it's believable
That's right. That's
because it
right.
was, yeah, it was something that we've already seen. Can we talk asteroids?
Sure.
Um, because of course there's so much science fiction out there that we've already seen in which asteroids are usually the big bad, and we see that in disaster movies. But
Yeah.
I attended a talk recently by Neil deGrasse Tyson, and he was talking about how asteroids are the big savior, right? Because asteroids could have everything we need,
That's true.
like enough water for generations.
That's right.
Just talk to me about that angle of season 4 and what it meant for the arc of the season.
So asteroid mining is something that's on our radar screens. There are multiple companies that are pursuing this as a way to make money because asteroids do have a lot of potential resources. A lot of very some of them have some very rare metals, but also just water. Because water, when you go into space, water is really the key, and that's why in season 1 and 2 we were focused on Shackleton Crater in the south pole of the moon because there really is ice there, and also on Mars. That's why Mars is also a great place to go because there's a potential to get water in situ on Mars, and from water you can create oxygen, which obviously is very useful. But you also can get hydrogen from it, and you can combine it with carbon dioxide in the atmosphere of Mars to make methane, and then you can have fuel. So asteroids also can contain abundant amounts of water. Asteroids could become your gas stations, a place where you can refuel your rockets. But if you brought an asteroid back that had a lot of valuable minerals or metals on it, then it also could be a tremendous resource. And I better stop there, or I'll get in trouble with giving away too many spoilers. But that is something that people are actively working on.
Very cool, very cool. No, that was one of the elements of this season that I got really excited about. Before I let you go, I've got like a minute left. I just wanted to ask about, after being out in space and after doing all the stuff that you've done, are you the kind of person that can still lose themselves in good science fiction, or are you doing the Neil deGrasse Tyson thing by going, "Wait a minute, no, that's not
Yeah,
quite right"?
I don't think I'm as bad as Neil, because
I
I
don't
know
think anyone is.
he gets very persnickety about these things. Um, but I'm worse than I used to be. Much better. So before I had this job, I used to watch. And I would be much more quickly to suspend my disbelief. I'd be much more willing to ignore gross mistakes. And now I find myself in. I watch all the cuts, and I read all the scripts, and I have to look for anything that could be wrong. That's my job. And now when I watch something for pleasure, I find myself doing the same thing. I'm like, oh no, and I start becoming like Neil. I start, and I don't want to be like that, but it's happening. Another guy, by the way, who was very much in that vein was Neil Armstrong. Apparently, he used to.
Oh, was he
Oh
really?
yeah, he used to watch all these science fiction shows and complain bitterly about these things. I talked to his sons, and they said that watching a movie with a dad, a science fiction movie, was just painful because he'd be constantly complaining about stuff that was wrong.
Garrett, I feel like if anyone has the right to do it, it's Neil Armstrong. I
Yeah,
was
it's hard.
there.
It's
That's
hard to.
bullshit. Yeah. Garrett, I'm all out of time, but thank you so much. This has been an absolute pleasure, and congratulations on the show.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure talking to you.
We got the best seat in the house.
That was Garret Reisman. He is the NASA tech advisor on For All Mankind. Catch season 4 when it drops on Apple TV Plus. Sound off in the comments. Let us know what you think. And thank you so much for watching.